Well, we kick off this morning. The time is just gone 9 minutes past 8, and we're going across to be joined by the president of the General Industrial Workers Union of South Africa. We're talking with Mametlwe Sebei. Mr. Sebei, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Morning to you and to listeners of Salam Media.
Yes, obviously, never ever a dull moment, and particularly looking at what is playing out around the entire world. The United States is in the spotlight as well, and looking at us here in South Africa, in fact, we've seen many expressing concern with regard to the AGOA initiative and the AGOA event as well. But just looking at where we are at this point in time with the United States, with AGOA, considering that the United States of America has openly declared its support. It has also made available resources, it's made available manpower. All of that now in South Africa, clearly, this has been a controversial issue in more ways than one in terms of South Africa. Should we still be talking with the United States of America, considering on AGOA, considering what is taking place around the world?
Yes, you are right. What's happening in Palestine is nothing short of, bloodbath, is carnage. Is a catastrophic situation that is increasingly developing into a genocide, as we have correctly pointed out in our previous statements on this. And I think from that point of view, it can be business as usual. I think what's happening there is indictment on humanity. All of us, every time that we look at history with hindsight, we always say never and never and never again, right? We said that after Holocaust. We said that when there was a Rwandan genocide. And people think that after every of this that we have learned better, that we are at a higher level and we have overcome the barbarism that, of course, stopped humanity. For as long as you have capitalism, you have imperialism, and of course, all the struggles for markets, all the struggle to extract and exploit labor, as well as the natural resources for the enrichment of the tiny elite of society, and particularly this elite concentrated in the advanced capitalist countries. And I think this is a context in which we have got to locate, the AGOA conference or summit that is taking place in South Africa. We have called for a boycott. We have called for a protest because we don't think we can be doing business as usual when the lives of so many are at stake, when children, the elderly, but we must say that, even ordinary Palestinians, and I don't even agree, by the way, that, as long as Israel is targeting civilians or the problem with Israel is that it's targeting civilians and so on. We have got to be unapologetic. The people and the masses of Palestine have the right to resist, including by means of an armed resistance. There is nothing hypocritical on us saying we do celebrate when Israeli forces are being defeated, are being fought, are being resistant, and we mourn every loss of Palestinian life, including those that are engaged in armed resistance. Of course, we do disagree with the deliberate targeting of civilians on the part of Hamas. We've criticized Hamas on its program, on its method, but I must say to you that I certainly mourn even the loss of an armed Palestinian resistance, because my position in this is not that of neutrality. I'm very clear, and we are very clear as GUSA. We are on the side of Palestinian national liberation. There is just an every single loss on their part. It is, of course, a loss to our movement, a movement against imperialism. And of course, on the part of the Israelis, we do mourn civilians, of course. And I must say that, you could even argue the loss of a regrettable, an innocent Israeli people is regrettable. By the way, even the soldiers that are being killed, many of them, of course, are joining Israeli army for all sorts of reasons. But we've got to be absolutely clear. The masses of Palestine are waging a just war of national liberation, and every method that advances that struggle, and by every method, I'm not saying everything goes. I mean that anything that genuinely advances their cause for national liberation and based on an internationalist approach, right? that we support, and I think that we want to state our position clear, and that's the reason that we are taking position that we are taking against Israel, U.S. imperialism that is arming, that is equipping, that is cheering, and that is encouraging that genocide taking place there.
Yes, and also, Mr. Sibai, we've seen some in the business community actually calling for calmer tones on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is taking place, and at the same time, we've seen representatives of business community, the Black Business Council, the Business Unity South Africa as well, saying that continuing with AGOA is in the best interest of the country and the African continent. Now, this is the reason why they are saying that South African government should be more calmer regarding the what is playing out in Gaza and Palestine as we speak.
That is absolutely treacherous, and I think as for business, these are capitalists. I don't expect much from them, by the way. I think what has disappointed me has been the reaction and the response of an organized labor movement. Voices have been said and have been expressed to say that, this is about jobs and so on. So there are two things to make very clear. We must be clear that this AGUA is not about jobs for the working class. It is about a mediation of the interest of different factions of imperialism of the capitalist class. In this case, is a network created by American, imperialism, with various neo-colonial African countries for the purpose of advancing their interest in looting and plundering a surplus and extraction of minerals from South Africa. That is what it is about. And we cannot divorce their economic policy from their political policy, right? Because in the final analysis, politics follows economics. Foreign policy is an application of domestic policy. You cannot have South Africa, by the way, that has been whining and, of course, complaining about the bullying of the U.S. imperialism, their hypocrisy in terms of selective application of the international law, and all of that on the one hand, and on the other hand, deepening and tying themselves more and more to the tailcoat of American imperialism and their cooperations and their market in this situation. Now, what am I proposing? Am I indifferent to plight of jobs of workers that are employed in those things? Absolutely not, right? But let's start with the benefits of AGUA. By the way, people are telling us about the auto industry. They are not also telling us what this AGUA actually means. When the AGUA came into effect, it was a trade-off between a privileged access of South African goods to certain industries, but that didn't come scot-free. You must read and you must learn about what AGUA meant for poultry industry. South Africa had to lift off restrictions on American poultry imports that are subsidized heavily by the state and are dumped on a South African market. The result has been devastating and catastrophic to many jobs that were lost in that industry. I can tell you, tens of thousands of jobs were lost in the poultry industry because of this agreement. Now, South African government entered into this industry as a trade-off. And why did they choose auto over chicken? It's for the same reason that they are also subsidizing auto industry. ANC government is committed first and foremost to the interest and the program of monopoly capitalism, which is far more concentrated and expressed more clearly in the auto and other highly monopolized industries. You have the giant of the industries, the Ford, the BMWs, all of those industries that have operations in South Africa in the interest, right? In the interest of those industries is South Africa participating at AGUA at the expense of other industries. So when people say they are concerned about jobs, they're not telling us how less concerned, how are the jobs of the workers in the poultry industry less important. Secondly, we are not saying that we are indifferent, right? There is alternatives to arrangement with AGUA. In this country, we have a massive crisis of public transport. We are saying nationalize auto industry, make sure that it's repurposed and repackaged in such a way that it can build the buses and other public transport infrastructure we desperately need to overcome the crisis of climate change, to overcome the crisis of pollution of the climate by that industry, which is still heavily dependent on fossil fuel powered vehicles and that are polluting and responsible for climate change.
Yes, and also I think, apart from the Palestinian issue, there's just so much damage that the United States has done to South Africa. You speak about the poultry industry and the whole issue surrounding climate change. And at the end of the day, when we see Business Unity South Africa also making a statement that South Africa needs to stick to its policy of non-alignment, saying that we can't run away from it. It's a real issue, but putting South Africa first and making sure our relationship with the US is maintained, Mametlwe.
The reality is that, you see, we always speak about the capitalist class in general, but the capitalist class, like every class, has different layers and factions. Business Unity South Africa is an organization of big monopolies, right? And I said those monopolies, the monopoly capital in particular, is expressed in its most pronounced and developed form in the auto industry, where there are probably about 4 or 5 major auto manufacturers in this country. Just 5 companies at most that we'll be able to count, right? And those are the interests that the Business Unity South Africa is speaking about. But I'm not saying I'm here to canvass the interest of other factions of the capitalist class. I'm just saying that when they say go slow, it is because they are tied in many ways to the interest of the US, but also of the Western imperialism. And it is for that reason that the ANC, which on the other hand has other industries that are increasingly tied as well to Chinese and the Russian, as well as the Eastern Bloc of imperialism in general. They are inconsistent in their policies because the reality is they're in a very hopeless neo-colonial dependence in the world market, and therefore are caught between different blocks of imperialism in the geopolitical arrangement of today and so on. Now, I'm saying the working class need to develop its own independent class and political policies. And how do you go about that? We are saying if you nationalize the auto and other industries, you would not have to worry about which section of imperialism want to do business with you and at the expense of which other industries, because this is not a choice of jobs over over politics and so on. In fact, what is a choice of is a choice of certain industries over the others, a choice of a certain section of imperialism over the other. That cannot be the policy of the workers' movement. We are saying, nationalize the auto industry. In fact, that industry, which, by the way, is subsidized to the tune of hundreds of billions by this government. And I think you must make time, by the way. One of these days that we discuss the subsidies that this government is channeled to the auto industry, because I think many in the media, you talk about the bailout of the state-owned enterprises, and you forget that even as and when these are privatized, and we can talk about steel manufacturers in a form of ArcelorMittal that used to be ESCO, how this is being subsidized by South Africa through what we call import parity pricing. How much subsidies are channeled to Sasol, which used to be a state-owned entity and was built with the money of the working class and taxpayers in this country. How that industry is being subsidized to the tune of 30 billion every year at the expense of South African economy, at the expense of South African people. Now, I want us one of these days to have a discussion about the money that is being channeled to auto industry. So I'm just saying that industry that on the basis of private ownership and corporate profiteering is not only compromising the stance of this country and the government in terms of its international relations, is not only meaning the treasury to the Palestinian working class, but as I always say, a foreign policy is an extension of domestic policy. It is actually government having taken side and, of course, subsidizing the interest of the monopolies in the corporate industry at expense of the South African working class, just as they are doing it internationally at expense of the international working class, in this case, the Palestinian masses that are facing horrific genocide.
Well, Mametlwe, I'm going to hold you to the discussion and the proposals that you have made, and I'm sure very, very soon you and I will connect again on the issues that you have raised. But for now, unfortunately, time is of the essence. We thank you. We do appreciate you taking time out and talking to us right here on Salam Media, as always. With your presence and also the your contribution to the broadcast that we have here on Salam Media. So all the best to you, sir, and we thank you for that.
Always a pleasure being here, and I'm more than grateful for the opportunity and the privilege of discussing with you and your listeners.
Mametlwe Sebei with us, the president of the General Industrial Workers Union of South Africa, against the AGOA summit that kicks off today at Nasrec and taking place over the next 3 days. And just to add to Mametlwe saying, is Alan Busak. Obviously, has raised his concerns with regards to the negative reflection on South Africa of hosting this AGOA summit, saying that that South Africa was playing host to countries that openly declared genocide against the people of Palestine, and also at the same time saying that he is deeply disturbed that South Africa is entertaining the United States of America in South Africa and playing host to countries that openly declared genocide against the people of Palestine. We're going to go for a break. We'll be back.